My name is Hannah Mercer. I am 32 years old, and 3 days before Christmas Eve, my mother looked straight across the dining table and said, "The best gift would be if you disappeared from this family." Nobody moved. Nobody corrected her. Nobody even pretended to be shocked. My father stared into his wine glass like he had been waiting for someone else to say it first. My brother leaned back in his chair with a slow, satisfied smile. My aunts and cousins kept their eyes on their plates, pretending the crystal glasses, the gold napkin rings, and the expensive roasted dinner mattered more than the daughter being erased in front of them. I remember the strange calm that came over me. Not sadness, not rage. Something colder. Something final. Because while they sat inside that six-bedroom house acting like I was the shame of the family, they had no idea whose money had kept the heat running, whose signature had saved the mortgage twice, whose credit had protected their status, and whose private account had already paid for their perfect Christmas Eve holiday dinner. They thought I was still the quiet daughter who worked with computers and accepted humiliation as the price of belonging. They didn't know that 24 hours earlier I had received an offer that would put me above the doctors they worshipped. They didn't know the house they called theirs was legally mine. And they definitely didn't know what I would tape to the fridge the next morning after granting my mother's Christmas wish. Before I tell you what happened after I walked out, and why the paper I left on that fridge destroyed their entire holiday, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before my family realizes silence has consequences. The Mercer name meant one thing in Boston: medicine. My grandfather had been a surgeon. My father, Dr. Richard Mercer, was chief of cardiology at Kingsbridge Memorial Hospital. My younger brother, Brandon, had just finished his fellowship and was being praised as the next great Mercer doctor. My mother, Elaine, was not a doctor, but she protected the family image like it was a royal bloodline. She organized charity dinners, chaired hospital committees, corrected people's grammar at fundraisers, and smiled like kindness was something she had bought, framed, and hung above the mantel. Then there was me, the family defect. I had gone to MIT, studied machine learning, and built diagnostic software for emergency rooms. To the outside world, I was a senior director at a medical AI company called MedNova Systems. To my family, I was the girl who had run away from real medicine because I couldn't handle blood, pressure, or tradition. They loved saying that in public. My father would introduce Brandon as Dr. Mercer, future department head, then gesture vaguely toward me and say, "And this is Hannah. She does something with data." My mother preferred sharper words delivered in softer tones. "Hannah is very independent," she would say, which in Mercer language meant difficult, selfish, and not useful unless a bill needed paying. What made it worse was that I had been paying. For 7 years, quietly, automatically, and stupidly, I had been the invisible financial spine of the family that mocked me. When my father's private investment collapsed after a failed medical real estate deal, he asked me to temporarily assist with the mortgage on the family home. Temporarily became 84 months. When my mother said she couldn't bear the embarrassment of downsizing because your father's reputation would never recover, I bought the house through a trust and allowed them to keep living there. The legal paperwork listed me as the owner. The family Christmas cards still called it the Mercer residence. Every month, $6,200 left my account for the mortgage, utilities, property tax reserve, insurance, landscaping, and the cleaning staff my mother claimed she needed to host properly. Every quarter, I covered hospital charity table fees, family travel deposits, emergency car repairs, and Brandon's temporary professional expenses. I kept a spreadsheet named Household Support, not because I planned revenge at first, but because numbers were the only place where the truth didn't twist itself to protect my parents. 7 years, 84 months. Mortgage assistance, $386,400. Utilities and property costs, $108,700. Event deposits and family expenses, $74,900. Total, $570,000, more than $500,000 to remain the least respected person at the table. The final insult started with the Christmas Eve dinner. My mother wanted to host the hospital's private holiday donor dinner at the house on December 24th. "It will help your father's campaign for medical director," she said, as if that explained why I should pay the caterer, the florist, the private chef, the valet company, and the rented crystalware. The deposit alone was $32,000. I paid it because some old, exhausted part of me still believed generosity could become proof of love. Then, 2 days before the family dinner, everything changed. Mednova's CEO called me into a confidential meeting. Our diagnostic platform had been selected for a national hospital rollout. Kingsbridge Memorial, my father's hospital, would be the flagship site. The board wanted me to lead implementation as Chief Technology Officer. The announcement would happen at the hospital gala on Christmas Eve, right before my father's speech about the future of medicine. My first reaction was not happiness, it was fear, because I knew exactly what that meant. The daughter they dismissed as not a real medical professional was about to become the executive responsible for the technology their hospital needed. My software had reduced diagnostic delays by 41% across pilot hospitals. It had caught strokes before symptoms became obvious, flagged cardiac events hours earlier than standard review, and helped emergency doctors make decisions faster. Over 14,000 patients had already benefited from a system my father once called a fancy calculator. I read the offer 3 times, then opened my family group chat. My mother had sent a message about Christmas Eve table assignments. Brandon replied, "Put Hannah near the kitchen. She understands support roles." 17 relatives reacted with laughing emojis. That was the moment I stopped confusing sacrifice with love. The family dinner happened on December 21st, 3 days before Christmas Eve, in the dining room of the house I owned, and they treated like a monument to themselves. My mother had decorated everything in silver and evergreen, the way she always did when she wanted guests to feel underdressed and emotionally small. There were 18 people at the table: my parents, Brandon, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and 2 hospital friends my father had invited to admire him. My place card was near the far end beside the swinging door to the kitchen. Brandon sat beside my father. My mother called it natural seating. I called it honest architecture. They had arranged the table exactly according to value. For the first hour, I said very little. I listened as my father explained that Kingsbridge Memorial needed a director who understood human medicine, not digital shortcuts. I listened as Brandon described his fellowship as though he had personally invented the heart. I listened as my mother told everyone the Christmas Eve dinner would be the social event that finally reminds Boston what the Mercer family represents. I thought about the $32,000 deposit sitting in my bank history. I thought about the house deed in my home office. I thought about the CTO contract waiting in my inbox, unsigned but ready. Then my aunt asked me, with a smile sharp enough to cut ribbon, "Hannah, are you still doing computer work, dear?" "Yes," I said. "Medical AI." My father gave a short laugh. "Let's not dress it up. Software is useful, but it isn't medicine." "It helps doctors catch what they miss," I replied. Brandon smirked. "Doctors don't need coders pretending to save lives." The hospital friends laughed awkwardly. My mother's eyes flashed a warning at me, not at them. That was always her way. She never stopped the cruelty. She only managed my reaction to it. "Hannah," she said, "tonight is important for your father. Please don't turn dinner into one of your little speeches about your job." My little job paid for this dinner, I said. The room froze. My father set down his fork. Excuse me. And the house, I continued, and the utilities, and Brandon's professional expenses, and the Christmas Eve donor dinner. My mother's face tightened, but her voice stayed sweet. This is not the time for dramatic exaggeration, so I opened my phone, pulled up the spreadsheet, and placed it on the table. 7 years, $570,000. Brandon leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You kept a spreadsheet on your own family? That's sick. No, I said. What's sick is needing a spreadsheet because my own family keeps pretending I contribute nothing. My father's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. His face was red now, not from embarrassment, but from the unbearable experience of being contradicted by the daughter he considered safe to disrespect. Money is not legacy, he said. You think paying bills buys you a place in this family? You think your little payments make you equal to generations of physicians? I looked at my mother, hoping for 1 second that she would step in. She did. Just not for me. You always do this, she said quietly. You make everything about yourself. Your father has carried this family's name for decades. Brandon is continuing that work. And you sit there counting dollars like love is a receipt. Something inside me went still. Love isn't a receipt, I said, but exploitation leaves records. That was when my mother put down her wine glass, folded her hands, and delivered the sentence that ended us. Honestly, Hannah, the best gift would be if you disappeared from this family. No one gasped. No one defended me. My grandmother looked away. My aunt pressed her lips together like she agreed but wanted plausible deniability. Brandon laughed under his breath. My father stood silently beside my mother, letting her words do what his pride wanted. I stood. You want me gone? My mother lifted her chin. Maybe then we could have one peaceful Christmas without your resentment poisoning everything. I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. All right. My father frowned. Don't be childish. I'm not, I said. I'm finally being obedient. I walked to the hall table and removed my house key from my key ring. Not because I was surrendering the house, but because I knew I would not need that key again after tomorrow morning. Behind me, Brandon said, She'll be back before Christmas Eve. She paid for the dinner. She loves being needed. The family laughed. Not loudly, not all of them, but enough. Enough to make the sound permanent. I stepped outside into the cold, closed the door behind me, and sat in my car for exactly 9 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, breathing like someone who had survived a crash. Then I opened the CTO contract, signed it electronically, and sent one message to MedNova's CEO. I accept, announce it at the gala. I did not sleep that night. I did not cry either. Crying would have made the pain feel temporary, and what I felt was not temporary. It was structural. It had beams, wiring, history, and a mortgage. At 1:12 a.m., I opened the folder I had avoided for years, house trust documents. At 1:24, I opened the purchase offer from a private buyer who had been contacting me for months through my real estate attorney. The offer was clean, all cash, above market, with a 30-day closing window. The buyer wanted the house as an executive residence for a medical foundation. I had ignored the offer because selling the house felt like admitting my family was never going to become grateful. Now it felt like answering a direct request. At 2:03 a.m., I signed the acceptance. At 2:18, I emailed the caterer and canceled the Christmas Eve donor dinner. According to the contract, canceling within 72 hours meant losing the deposit, but I didn't care. I paid the deposit. I could burn it. What I would not do was fund my own erasure. The florist, valet company, quartet, rental service, and private chef all received cancellation notices before sunrise. By 6:30 a.m., my mother's perfect Christmas Eve dinner had become a chain of professionally worded apologies. By 7 o'clock, the event planner called me in a panic. Mrs. Mercer said the dinner is still happening. No, I said. Mrs. Mercer was never the client. I was. There was a pause. Should I inform her? I'll handle it. At 8:15 a.m., I drove back to the house. Everyone was still asleep except the cleaning staff. I let myself in through the side entrance using the owner's code, walked past the silver garlands and imported candles, and went directly to the kitchen. The refrigerator was covered with my mother's Christmas Eve schedule: valet arrival, champagne service, donor seating, father's toast, Brandon introduction, family photo by fireplace. She had even written, Hannah, help coordinate vendors in neat blue ink, not daughter, not guest, labor. I removed her schedule and replaced it with 5 sheets of paper. The first was the accepted sale agreement for the house. Highlighted, seller, Hannah Mercer Family Trust. Closing date, January 22nd. The second was the event cancellation confirmation. Highlighted, Christmas Eve donor dinner canceled by authorized paying client. The third was the household support spreadsheet summary. Highlighted, total paid by Hannah Mercer, $570,000. The fourth was the email from MedNova confirming my appointment as incoming Chief Technology Officer. The fifth was a single page I typed at 3:40 a.m. It said, "You asked me to disappear from this family. I am honoring that request. Effective immediately, I will no longer fund, protect, explain, support, rescue, or represent the Mercer family. The house is sold. The dinner is canceled. The automatic payments end today. Do not call me unless your first words are an apology." I taped each page to the fridge with my mother's own gold holiday tape. Then I walked through the house one last time. Not emotionally, not slowly, not like a movie. I simply checked each room the way an owner checks a property before transfer. In the library, my father's awards covered the wall. My MIT diploma was not there, of course. In the living room, the family Christmas portrait from last year hung above the fireplace. My parents, Brandon, and a golden retriever that had died before the photo was taken. I had been too busy to attend the shoot, according to my mother. In reality, nobody had told me. I looked at their smiling faces, then at the mantle I had paid to repair after a winter pipe burst, and felt nothing but clarity. The first call came at 9:06 a.m. My mother. I let it ring. Then my father. Then Brandon. Then my mother again. By 9:30, the family group chat became a storm. Mom. Hannah, what have you done? Dad. Call me immediately. This is not funny. Brandon. You psycho. You sold the house? Aunt Carol. Sweetheart, I'm sure emotions were high last night. Grandmother. Your mother is crying. Fix this. I turned off notifications and drove to MedNova's downtown office. The legal team had prepared my employment announcement. The communications team had prepared the press release. Kingsbridge Memorial had prepared the Christmas Eve gala program. Nobody outside the executive circle knew that the same woman whose mother had asked her to disappear would stand under the ballroom lights tomorrow as the future of the hospital's technology strategy. At 11 a.m., MedNova's CEO, Adrian Cole, entered the conference room carrying 2 coffees and the careful expression of a man who had read enough of my emails to understand there was a personal war beneath the professional one. "Are you sure you want the announcement at the gala?" he asked. "My father is speaking there," I said. "I know. My mother's dinner was supposed to impress the same board members." "I know that too." "Then yes," I said. "I'm sure." Adrian studied me for a moment. "Your platform has now assisted in 14,800 verified early interventions. The board wants to say 15,000 on stage because we'll cross it by tomorrow afternoon." I looked out the glass wall toward the city. Somewhere across Boston, my family was probably standing in front of the fridge, reading the truth they had spent 7 years refusing to name. "Then say 15,000, I said. "They always told me real medicine saves lives. Let's show them what real medicine looks like when it evolves. Christmas Eve arrived with snow in the forecast and chaos in my voicemail. My mother left 12 messages before noon. The first ones were furious. "You had no right to embarrass us." Then frightened. "The vendors are calling me. People are asking questions." Then pleading. "Hannah, please. Your father's colleagues were invited. We can't cancel now?" My father's messages were shorter, colder, and more revealing. "The house sale is legally questionable. You owe this family a conversation. Do not bring private matters to the gala." Brandon sent one message at 2:11 p.m. "You better not show your face tonight." I smiled when I read that one, because my face was about to be 30 feet tall on the gala screens. The Kingsbridge Memorial Christmas Eve Gala was held at the Fairmont Copley Ballroom, under chandeliers my mother once described as the proper lighting for legacy. 500 people attended. Surgeons, donors, board members, hospital executives, medical journalists, and families like mine who believed reputation could be polished until it looked like morality. I arrived in a black dress, a white coat not on my shoulders but folded over my arm, and a small silver pin shaped like a neural network on my collar. The registration volunteer looked down at the list and then up at me with sudden respect. "Ms. Mercer, you're at the MedNova table, front center." Front center meant table 1. My father's table was table 3. Close enough for him to watch, far enough for him to understand the hierarchy had shifted. I saw them before they saw me. My mother wore a deep green gown and the fixed smile of a woman who had spent the day lying. My father stood near the stage, shaking hands with board members as if his house had not been sold that morning. Brandon was laughing too loudly with 2 residents. When his eyes found me, the laugh died in his mouth. He leaned toward my father and whispered something. My father turned. For a moment, the 3 of them stared at me as if I were a ghost they had summoned by accident. Adrian Cole stood as I approached the MedNova table. "Hannah," he said warmly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Our new CTO." Heads turned. My father's face tightened. My mother's hand closed around her clutch. Dinner began. Speeches followed. A donor thanked the hospital. A board chair thanked the donor. Then my father was introduced for his keynote, "The Human Future of Medicine." He walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who believed public admiration could erase private dependence. His speech started exactly as I expected. He spoke about legacy, tradition, physician judgment, and the sacred responsibility of families who gave their lives to medicine. He mentioned his father. He mentioned Brandon. He did not mention me. Then he made his mistake. "In an age where too many people believe machines can replace human excellence," he said, "we must remember that true medicine cannot be written by programmers. It cannot be automated by people who chose easier paths. It lives in the hands of trained physicians." A few people clapped. Many did not. Some looked toward the MedNova table because they knew what my father apparently did not. The hospital had already signed a preliminary agreement to implement my platform system-wide. A young ER doctor raised his hand from the side of the room. "Dr. Mercer, isn't Kingsbridge adopting MedNova's diagnostic AI next quarter?" My father's smile sharpened. "Tools are tools. They are useful when supervised by real doctors." "And the lead architect?" the doctor asked. "Isn't that your daughter?" The ballroom shifted. My mother closed her eyes. Brandon stared at the table. My father adjusted the microphone. "My daughter works in technology," he said. "I'm proud she found something suitable for her abilities, but let's not confuse support work with the practice of medicine." That was when Adrian stood. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Billion-dollar CEOs don't hurry when they are about to end a lie. "Dr. Mercer," he said, voice carrying cleanly through the ballroom, "I appreciate your thoughts on support work. It makes tonight's announcement especially timely." My father froze. Adrian walked onto the stage. The board chair, who knew exactly what was coming, stepped aside. The screens behind them lit with the MedNova logo. Ladies and gentlemen, Kingsbridge Memorial's future depends on a partnership between medical expertise and responsible technology. Tonight, MedNova Systems is proud to announce a $50 million implementation and research partnership with this hospital. Applause rose, confused but enthusiastic. This partnership, Adrian continued, will be led by our incoming Chief Technology Officer, the architect of the diagnostic platform that has already contributed to more than 15,000 verified early medical interventions. The screen changed. My name appeared in white letters. Hannah Mercer, incoming Chief Technology Officer, MedNova Systems. The room went silent before it exploded. My father stepped away from the podium like the words had physical weight. Brandon's glass tipped over. My mother whispered, "No." But the microphone caught enough of it for nearby tables to hear. Adrian turned toward me. "Hannah, would you join us?" I stood. Every step to the stage felt less like revenge and more like recovery. I passed doctors who had once asked me if I regretted not becoming a physician. I passed board members who had eaten at tables I paid for. I passed my family, whose faces had gone pale with the terrible understanding that I had not disappeared. I had arrived somewhere they could not control. I took the microphone. "Good evening," I said. "My father is right about one thing. Medicine should never lose its humanity. That is exactly why we built this platform. To give doctors more time, better information, and earlier warnings when lives are at risk." The first slide showed diagnostic delay reductions. The second showed emergency intervention statistics. The third showed hospital pilot outcomes. Then came the number: 15,018 early interventions. "These are not abstract data points," I said. "They are people who got more time because a physician and a system worked together. A mother whose stroke was caught early, a teacher whose cardiac pattern triggered an alert, a teenager whose rare infection was flagged before standard review escalated it. Technology did not replace doctors. It gave them another set of eyes." My father stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him. Then the board chair stepped forward. "For transparency," she said, "I also want to clarify that MedNova's partnership was not facilitated by Dr. Richard Mercer, despite language recently submitted in an internal director application. The board has reviewed documentation. This partnership was initiated through Ms. Mercer's work and MedNova's independent clinical results." A murmur moved through the ballroom, sharper than applause. My father reached for the podium. Brandon looked like he wanted to vanish. My mother's reputation, my father's director campaign, and Brandon's golden boy mythology were all cracking in public. Not because I attacked them, but because the truth had finally been given a microphone. I looked toward table 3. "Last night," I said carefully, "my mother told me the best gift would be if I disappeared from this family. This morning, I honored that request. I removed my financial support. I canceled the dinner I paid for. I accepted the role I had earned, and I taped the documentation to the fridge, because sometimes a family that refuses to hear you needs to read the consequences in black and white." No one laughed now. After the gala, the story moved faster than my family could control. By midnight, medical reporters had already published the headline: "Boston cardiologist dismissed daughter's AI career before her platform became hospital's $50 million future." By Christmas morning, the second headline hurt them even more: "Mercer family holiday dinner canceled after daughter ends financial support." My mother called 43 times. My father sent legal threats. Brandon left one furious voicemail calling me selfish, cruel, and jealous. I saved everything and answered nothing. The consequences came quickly. The hospital board postponed my father's director review and demanded clarification about why he had claimed credit for MedNova's partnership. Brandon's fast-track promotion was frozen pending an internal review. My mother's social circle, the one she had protected more fiercely than her own daughter, collapsed almost overnight. Everyone knew the Christmas Eve dinner had been canceled because I was the paying client. Everyone knew the house was not really hers. Everyone knew the documents had been taped to the fridge. Without my monthly support, the house became impossible to keep. The sale moved forward. My parents had 30 days to leave. My mother called it betrayal. My attorney called it ownership. On January 3rd, the board officially rejected my father's director application, citing poor leadership judgment and resistance to technology-integrated care. Brandon was reassigned to supervised inpatient work after the review found evidence of favoritism in his advancement. Late that night, my father finally texted me, "You have made your point. Family should not destroy family." I replied once, "Family should not exploit family. Family should not erase family. Family should not take $500,000 from someone they publicly shame. I did not destroy the Mercer name. I stopped financing the lie that protected it." He never answered. By mid-January, they moved out of the house. I was not there to watch. I had already started my new role at MedNova, leading the hospital implementation my father had mocked. In the first week, our system flagged 37 critical cases earlier than standard review would have. One of them came from my father's department. The report crossed his desk with my name at the top. For the first time, he had to rely on the work he once called support. 1 year later, on Christmas morning, I sat in my apartment overlooking the Charles River and opened the old folder labeled Mercer Family. Inside were the sale agreement, the payment spreadsheet, the canceled dinner confirmation, the board decision, and the photo of those 5 pages taped to the fridge. I used to think that photo was the climax of my revenge. Now it felt more like proof that I had finally stopped begging people to see the truth. My parents were living in a smaller townhouse outside the city. My mother no longer chaired hospital holiday events. My father still worked at Kingsbridge, but the room no longer bent around him. Every department, including his, now used the MedNova system. Every quarterly report carried data from the platform he had once dismissed. Brandon lost his privileged path and spent the year rebuilding under supervision. He still struggled with resentment, but for the first time, he had to earn what he received. My mother apologized first. Her letter was 4 pages long and painfully specific. She named the dinner, the laughing emojis, the seat near the kitchen, and the sentence that broke everything. She wrote, "I confused your silence with permission. I confused your money with duty. I confused your pain with attitude. I was wrong." I did not forgive her immediately, but I kept the letter. My father took longer. In September, after my platform helped his team prevent a fatal delay, he sent one short email. "Your system worked today." In October, he wrote, "The alert was correct." In November, I should not have called it support work. Then, on December 21st, exactly 1 year after my mother told me to disappear, a card arrived at my office. Inside he wrote, "I took your help and denied your value. I am sorry." It was not enough to erase the past, but it was the first honest sentence he had ever given me without asking for something in return. I agreed to meet them on Christmas Eve afternoon at a quiet cafe. No house, no gala, no legacy. Just 4 people sitting with the truth. I told them the terms before I arrived. No requests for money, no rewriting history, no guilt. If anyone minimized what happened, I would leave. The meeting lasted 42 minutes. It was awkward, uncomfortable, and imperfect. But nobody mocked my work. Nobody asked me to pay. Nobody treated my boundaries like cruelty. When I returned home, MedNova's dashboard showed more than 52,000 verified early interventions, 52,000 lives touched by the work my family once laughed at. That mattered more than their approval ever did. My mother asked for my disappearance as a Christmas gift, so I gave her exactly that. I disappeared from the role they assigned me, the silent payer, the convenient disappointment, the daughter they could humiliate as long as the bills cleared. In her place, I became someone they could no longer use. If your own family told you the best gift would be your disappearance, would you fight to stay? Or would you leave the truth taped to the fridge and let them finally understand what your absence costs?
Truly appreciate your time and attention today. This fictional story was made only for storytelling, education, and entertainment. We hope it reminds you that when people try to make you responsible for the damage they caused, you are allowed to refuse that burden. Their choices belong to them, and your healing belongs to you.